I saw Commissioner Webby.
Yeah, I just
He
went
looked like
told
he-
we'll start and he can just come in.
Oh, by way of information, Commissioner Watson contacted me and needs to leave early today, so he was gonna join online, so make sure we have the Zoom.
Okay.
So he can join online until he couldn't.
Okay.
He might
I'm
join,
here.
but we'll only let him text instead of.
He's on here. I'm just adding him as a panelist so he can jump in as needed.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm Chairman Thomas. I'd like to welcome everybody out to the March 15th, 2023 North Ogden City Planning Commission meeting. We'll make note that all commissioners are in attendance tonight. Commissioner Watson is joining us online. We will begin with an invocation or a thought by Commissioner Watson, followed which being led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Green.
If Commissioner Watson's okay to do that, that's great. If he wants someone physically to do it, I can volunteer for that.
I'm here.
No. I should unmute our speaker.
Are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I'll go ahead. Our Father in heaven, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of our community. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
If we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. As noted, all commissioners are in attendance tonight. Do we have any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest on our text amendment tonight?
No.
All right. Well, I will read our opening meeting statement. Before each agenda item begins, city staff will give a report. After the staff report, the item will be open for other speakers. The applicant will speak first and be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following the applicant, any other interested person will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. The applicant has final rebuttal time of up to 5 minutes. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, e.g. pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and address before beginning their remarks. If you agree with a previous speaker, then state your agreement to avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or microphone and shall address all comments to the planning commission. And please silence your phones. All right, we'll open up tonight for public comments. Anything you'd like to address to the planning commission, please feel free to step up to the mic and do so. Is tonight, are we just having a discussion on the text amendment?
Yeah, there's
No action?
Yeah, I actually have a comment on that. I'm wondering, not suggesting if there's public input throughout the discussion, if we would welcome that or not. Or
Well, how
I'd
the
like to raise
discussion
it down.
really gonna go, Scott? What do you? I mean, I welcome it. Just, I don't want to have it back and forth the entire time, so I don't. How, like, do you, if there's a couple, we'll have a couple stop off points where we can open up for public comment.
it seems
So-
like, the reason I brought that up, it seems like in the past there were workshops and things like that, for
Yeah.
public engagement prior to this, and I didn't see a lot of that this time, and I think the public input's important, so.
Yeah, well, good point. So if you are here on the text amendment for the general plan, we will open up a couple of times for public comment on that as we go through it. But other than that, please feel free to step up to the mic and address us. All right, anybody online?
Nope.
All right, we'll move on to our only agenda item tonight, which is a legislative item. Item number 4, General Plan Text Amendment 2023-02. This is consideration and discussion on a legislative application to amend the general plan from 2015. The update includes text, goals, and vision and covers the entire land area of North Ogden City. Our presenter will be our planner, Scott Hess, as well as Steve Thomas, our consultant, right?
No, so Stephen
Oh.
Thomas is an intern with the city who helped prepare the notes,
Ah,
but he is not able to.
It's just you.
tonight. It's just me.
okay. Scratch that. Stephen Thomas is not. All right, Scott, turn it over to you.
Okay, there was a brief staff report that doesn't look like it made it into the agenda, at least the one that I pulled down today, because it starts just directly with those notes, right? General plan notes.
Yeah,
I hope you were able to, get any information needed to online. It had the links in there, but I'll just run through really quickly on the staff report. The last time the general plan was amended in earnest is 2015. So since then, there was an update in 2019. The process to begin the general plan map in 2021 that took about a year to do, and it abandoned in some ways the text of the general plan. So there's some mismatches between the current adopted 2022 future land use map and the text, and it's mostly in how we clarify or classify what those areas of the city are. So what downtown means, what Southtown area means, and the other land use categories, which in the text right now, we're pretty loose, but as we move through with the planning commission and city council, we established actual on the books zoning code, areas that would go with those land areas. So we just wanted to really have this meeting be a brainstorming session and an orientation for the planning commission to the process that will embark now with the public as well, and spend several months, is my guess, going through the general plan piece by piece and show you just essentially what we've done. So the intention from staff is to take notes tonight and hear from the planning commission on what you'd like to see. The general plan as it currently is 380 pages, something like that, with appendices. And I think that for staff, we'd like to get that down to a much tighter executive document, something that might actually be willing to sit down and flip through as a new resident and get more direct to the information that they would be looking for instead of having to dig through it for anything that they're looking for. So I'm thinking shortening it is one major thing that we want to do, aligning it with the current council goals, align it with planning commission's goals, and really have it, be an opportunity for we're about 50% of the growth that we expect. We're 21,000 people and some change. We think that we're going to be about 40,000 people based on the county control totals and what our current underlying zoning would accommodate if we were to just build out in the way that we're currently building out. And then, so that's kind of the background, what we're hopeful to do with you all. And tonight in taking notes, I'd like to understand what the planning commission's desire for level of public input is. Do you want to host some open houses? Do you want to try to go out to the public? You can, in past work that I've done like this, we've held open houses at elementary schools or kind of those independent third places that aren't necessarily city hall. And, just determine what level of push we want to make with the public versus like an Facebook campaign, online campaign, and public notice campaign to get feedback back from the public. But the intention not to be doing too much to the map itself, but really in what is everybody looking for from the text of this document. And then this gives us a chance as well to bring it up to compliance with last year's state code changes, which added one is we've continuously updated our moderate income housing plan information. And that's housed both as a standalone plan now, as well as there's a bunch of information in the current 2015 plan that can be scrubbed out and eliminated because it's already housed over in the document we have to send to the state. And, really obvious to what's happening right now, water planning in the state is now cities over a certain size, and North Ogden meets that criteria, are supposed to have a section in the future by 2025, but water planning in the general plan. And that would include culinary, stormwater, and sewer, secondary, so culinary, secondary, stormwater, and sewer. Some of those things we don't own and manage. We manage some infrastructure for sewer, but it ultimately ends out in the sewer district. We don't manage secondary water systems at all. Those are done by third party. We don't own any secondary water systems, but we should still be planning for those through what are our rules and regulations for things like xeriscaping on new subdivisions gonna look like, or permissions of current residents to do that to reduce secondary water use. And then what are our culinary needs between now and build out, essentially, which is different than what the planning departments have had to think about before. That's been really housed in public works and engineering to think about what the state requires for fire flow and what we have for culinary water storage. But those two things butt right up against each other when you start to talk about new development, especially up the hill. Right now we have an imaginary line drawn across the hill, which is the height that we can develop to before we need to build another water reservoir higher on the hill to gravity feed water. So we have available land for development that's going to take significant investment by the private sector in order to develop, and we should be thinking about that at the planning commission level. So lots of work to do. And just to show you, we've had intern Stephen Thomas, who's with the University of Utah finishing up his degree, has gone through, he spent a couple hours on it today. He and I chatted, but this is where we were at last week. He's been going through just section by section and making little notes like this is, we're going to update this text, or we need to move this or eliminate it. What we should focus on, what feels out of place. And we have some notes like that, but don't take these as this is what is going to happen. It's a suggestion based on staff's first review of this. So with that, I really, take questions, comments. I want to take notes tonight on what the process, what you all want it to look like. And it's not a formal, it's not a formal public hearing tonight. I just wanted to give you kind of an introduction to it. So no decisions are being made. It's just a chance to say, this is a preview of work that we're going to now engage in over the next several meetings and or months, depending on how long it takes.
Kind of thought, comments regarding public engagement. Haven't seen this now, this process once through. I remember we got a lot of public, I thought, pretty good public engagement 5 years ago when we readdressed this. But the input primarily came back in general terms. It was walkability and green space, and those things were like easy to say yes to. And so we got these concepts, but then Brandon Bell went and did a bunch of work to try to actually write code that then promotes those things. And then the public showed up in droves and was against it. I mean, correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
that's pretty
right?
much what happened.
And so with public engagement, I think there's these things that sound great, but then when they actually we try to adopt them, they're tough. So I'd like to see specifics from the public instead of general terms like walkability and stuff, which I mean, those things are great. And I think everybody supports, but when we've worked for 5 years to try to pass it, it didn't work. So I'd like to see, well, this space needs to be, this or this very specific, not the town needs more walkability. Because even when we try to put in a bike lane, up on Mountain Road and stuff, it was like, oh, you don't need that. And so that'd be my comment.
Was the feedback, it seems like the first set of feedback was from the public at large. Was the pitchforks in the second from specific people, or was that the public at large?
Well, yeah, it was when we actually tried to apply the principles to a zone or to a plot of land. And it was like, well, yeah, everybody wants walkability and tell us on what they're trying to develop. Or until it's around them or.
Right, next to their house.
And walkability, it seems like everyone would want that, but we actually had people come to the podium and say, people don't walk in this town. We want to drive. And somebody said, I watched people at Smith's and they drive from Smith's to Ace Hardware, even though that's a 200-yard commute there. I mean, but it sold wildly in the workshops, right? Like if you put on the board and say, here's a bunch of principles, which are your favorite ones? And you have walkability and green space and clean air and all that. People go, and then walkability. But then when you try to put in code that promotes it, and you're like shifting the buildings toward the street, an alley in the back, nobody wanted it. That's my opinion. Sorry.
No, all great points. I guess along those lines, the biggest concern that I would have is, we had a group of citizens a couple of years ago who put in many, many hours to look at this, redo this land use map. And there was a lot of public input at that time. And so I hope we're not going to reinvent that whole wheel again, because it's sort of disrespectful to the work that those folks put in. So hopefully these changes sort of Or just sort of codifying the work that they came up with, unless something has really changed in this, state legislature.
I wouldn't say anything has really changed from the red lines that those two, and then the two co-chairs of that committee, Grant Protzman and Steph Casey, have been, I've asked both of them for their red lines, and I chatted with Steph last night at city council, and she said that she would get those to me. So they've both spent significant time in the general plan, and I think those would be frameworks to look at in addition to what, staff looks at, and a fresh set of eyes in the public. And because again, they were doing that work as a sideline to what the major thing that needed to be done was the land use map, the update to the general plan land use map. And usually these things go hand in hand, but I think the city had a more clear idea of what we're trying to do from the land use map side of things. We had so many development applications coming in that it's easier to kind of correct the visual and then write the text to meet this visual map that we've adopted.
Thanks.
Yeah, because I think we still have, we have those conservation areas on the map, but we still don't have code, right? That you can really utilize that.
Yeah, we haven't developed a conservation ordinance to let people actually apply it.
So that's one thing. It looks good on the map from those people that wanted that and say, yeah, let's save some area. And then, we didn't create code to utilize that. But then at the same time, I know being one of the people on that committee, when you explain sometimes to that, saying, well, by having a conservation area, what you're doing is trading the density from there to somewhere else. Where else do you want it? And then all of a sudden, just like what you were saying earlier, is the conversation changed. Well, I don't want more over here, or I don't want more there. And so then it comes back to, well, then do we not want to have that be a conservation area or whatever? And so that's what's always hard. And we're always going to face that. That's
Certainly. Yeah. I was just thinking of a way to make the feedback more effective, because I thought it was good and engaging, but we weren't able to really do much with it.
Well, and I think that's a really good point. In my experience, just working with school teams, et cetera, sometimes it is easier to orient people to the vision or to come up with a common vision, but it's that practicality of the give and takes to get to the vision that become problematic. So I do think maybe one suggestion I would make is just if we could give them more specific scenarios or more specific information to give us feedback on, that could help at least get us a little closer to what the practicalities are. Like, because vision's great, right? But then there's the give and take. So that would just be my, let's give them a little more meat to it, and then maybe we'll get better feedback. And there will always, of course, be people who disagree. That's
I think that's what started us down the path of form-based code, if you remember.
So yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about.
And so we then went through, I don't know, how long did you do that? 18 months?
At least.
2 years
So
almost.
Granite-Bill doesn't work anymore.
PTSD.
Going through to actually define all of that and then going through that whole process, it changed to where, no, we don't,
And over that time, city council members changed, things changed in the city, things are dynamic. And so I guess people approach things a different way, different people even on the planning commission perhaps looked at it differently within the 2 or 3 year time that we, struggled through that. So I guess that's human nature.
does everybody feel comfortable with, we have a land use map that was 22, that we adopted that. And, really looking at saying, okay, we're going through to put words to the picture now, where before we kind of had words to a potential, right?
Yeah.
And so
Vision.
now I think maybe, so some of that is probably more, I guess, what staff goes through and, hey, we need to adjust this so it matches. I think if we use the map as kind of the key and saying, well, we want to organize that. And then I don't know if we need to, what we need to dial down. To me, the areas to address in specifics with text, and I don't, not that needs to change, other than the areas is really, when you look at the map, is conservation area if we're going to do something there, but also still along Washington, on the map that we've got, the reds, the pinks, and the purples, and the orange areas. They're the smallest parts of the city. And, probably look at that detail Whereas the rest of it is still, on the map, everything that's yellow is residential. And for the most part, it's hard, it's low density residential, but low density residential is still, 4 or 5 units to the acre. It's, we have, I know we went through that a lot with some people who are like, well, that's high density. And, really, as a code explains and pretty much common practice anyway, I don't know, where would you say the line draws when you say you designate between low residential and medium?
Yeah, so we did that as part of the future land use map, and everything's in context of the city, right? So our low, medium, high is going to be unique from far northwest Weber County or Box Elder County versus Ogden City. So high for us was 20 units an acre. So Village of Prominence Point tops out on an average just about 18 and a half. And if you take out the cottage lots, it's a little bit higher than that. It's like 25, 26, something like that units per acre. And so medium is somewhere in that like 10 to 15 range. And you can get 4,000 square foot single family lots, which is small, but that's Century Farms. That's 10 units an acre. And you can do that same 10 units an acre in like 4 to 6 connected units of townhomes wide on a project by the time you take the open space and streets and parking and storm detention requirements out of it. So that, you can put 8 to 12 units an acre on the ground in a lot of different configurations, some of which seem less or more attractive than others, depending on what you're looking at. I mean, the old avenues or east of Harrison Boulevard, some of those really, really nice areas of Ogden are 4 to 6,000 square foot lots, and that would be high density for us, but you drive through it and there's street trees and there's wide park strips. And so it feels more open than maybe driving through a similar like courtyard type townhome project. But that was where we drew the line. So low was anything below about 6 to 8 units an acre. Medium is that like 8 to 15, and then 15 to like 25 was high.
I think that's a big advantage that we have, that people can, people from North Ogden are connected to Ogden. A lot of families have been around here for a long time, and they've driven those streets and they're familiar with what they once were and, can be and what they are right now. And I think from a strategic standpoint, I wonder if part of educating the public about this to help it take its next step forward is the idea of, hey, we've got to have a plan. Because if we don't have a plan and we're not coordinating with all the interested parties, which includes every individual citizen of North Ogden, it does include developers. Developers are the ones who actually end up doing the work to do this. And if there can be some education that people realize, oh, we've got to have a plan, we actually need to make some decisions. If we don't, and we're in this of, well, we just show up with our pitchforks and everyone's an enemy, then what we end up with planning for our community that is really hodgepodge, and it's really challenging. But if we can come together as a community and have a cohesive plan, then the developers know, oh, this is what they want, and they'll do that. And it makes it easier for staff, it makes it easier for everyone. So I wonder if, like has been mentioned, using the map to ground in, using the plan as it is. And I think even the stuff that you're talking about as far as like, hey, making it approachable. I don't even know that we have to do away with 400 pages if that's what it takes, but maybe making some more condensed versions or versions that are approachable that people might read. Maybe even consider, our North Ogden established 1851 thing of adding some sort of mantra in there about the future. Because really what that says is, hey, we've been around for a long time, we have mountains, but it doesn't.
Like established 1851,
Yeah.
Closed 2025.
Yeah, and we're gonna stay that way.
That's exactly what people.
Remember the Indian law.
Projected closing date, and then put a date.
Yeah. But just, yeah, just the thought about, hey, if we don't have a plan, because I think everyone will bite into that, like, oh yeah, is a very active community in wanting to give feedback and wanting to be involved. Human nature is to make that negative sometimes, like, oh, I don't want that, out of fear. But if we can take that energy and funnel it as a planning commission into specific things that in the next 5 years, we'd really like to accomplish, it's likely that developers will take that and figure out a way to make it pencil and actually make that happen. You know, they want to make money and they should, that's their livelihood. And I think we have a really neat community with a lot of attributes. So if we can get the vision from the residents, we can filter it so it makes sense and then put it out there so developers can see that. It seems more likely that those things will come to pass.
For what it's worth, I'm very much in support of a smaller general plan than 350 pages. I think in the age of TikTok, people want to ingest information as quickly as possible.
You're saying Scott needs to do a TikTok video.
General plan down to 8 seconds. Something that we can tweet.
Well, you're not wrong, though, that like going back to your comment about, you know, the city having like a motto or tagline, like even if we could summarize into a couple paragraphs, like the real essence, that would be huge. I mean, you think about how,
But that's not a general plan.
well, no, exactly. I just mean like the objectives, like you were speaking for 5 years, like some of our maybe main objectives. But I do agree that the staff comments on here from this, from Stephen, they all seem very appropriate, like taking out the historical information. But my comment to that was just, I would like to see that living somewhere, maybe on North Ogden's website, so that we don't lose that information, but it could be removed, I would think. And I agree with his other, just text updates.
Well, that's what I noticed going back over, a lot of that general plan wasn't a general plan. It's more of a history of North Ogden. There's more of the pictures of North Ogden, more businesses in North Ogden. It wasn't a general plan. A lot of that stuff can be eliminated or put in a whole different sections of the plan. Almost like a chapter type thing.
I wasn't around for the inclusion of that, but I'll bet that was put in there for a purpose. I bet a body like this talked about it and went, and I don't disagree with you, but they probably went, you know what, we don't have that reference to the past, you know,
Well,
that
that's-
sounds gonna change into something we don't want.
Well, that's why you could put that in a separate part of plan here and a history type thing here. So separate it out. So if somebody wants, what's the plan of North Ogden, they go to there rather than digging through 400 pages to find it.
Yeah, there's also a lot of present statements about the present though that relate to that.
It
You know,
does.
the language, a country feel comes up in that document many times. And really what that speaks to is the history of North Ogden. And I think people want that. We're not looking at a place where we're going to have towers in this town. People want Fruitland Drive. You know, they want Loman View Drive of what's left of that. That there's elements that people want to have kind of a community country
This goes-
feel.
But there's not much of Fruitland Drive.
Yeah, this goes
There
back
is
to those
It's not gonna be
concepts
to the other
that
one.
sound great on the, in general concepts.
Yep.
And the practicality of it is almost impossible.
It is,
Because
but I think it speaks to the past. I don't think people want to like completely give that up if we can figure out ways to do it. It might not be possible, but it is something that's incorporated into that document that is it's a present statement, not just about the history.
I know it,
Here's a
a lot of it is included in there to kind of give context to why did we do this? Well, you know, why didn't we do something? And most of the time it's obviously it's the public, it's what the public wants and you know, but having been here in 2015 when we did this, you know, the consultants that kind of put it all together, you know, their idea of the general plan was like, you know, creating this big storybook of what you have been doing, why you are doing, and what you plan to do. And that's what ends up, but as you can see with all the stuff that's in there, plus everybody's comments to the charrettes in public meetings that filled out a survey, they put in there as well. And that gives you the the public really did want this. The planning commission didn't just pull this,
Right.
you know, out of their hat, but
Yeah.
at the same time, that's probably not, you know, that's probably a second support document that doesn't really need to be part of it.
Yeah, lots of appendices are possible with these. Just to show you, I just sent John a link to this. When I worked at Wasatch Front Regional Council, we had a big federal document required by the Economic Development Administration, which is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And this guides how we're going to spend any federal economic development dollars that came into the 5-county region. And when this plan was first written, like 15 years ago. This is getting ready to be updated. It was pretty short, and then the second iteration of it, it was just like an additive iteration. So it went from approachable, like 100 pages to like 250, and then we cut it down. I think this is 70 something pages. And I wrote this in a Google Doc, and then we had a company, third-party company, come in and do the design for it and make it really graphic. But John, if you scroll through this, it focused way, far more on little bits of text and tables. So you take something like this massive public involvement process and you break it down into what were the 12 or 15 major, pieces of information that came back to you, and how do you relate that in a few table formats. And it's a document that, especially this one, WFRC is big on printing these glossy documents, and you have them available and you pass them around, and you've got elected officials who will take them. But it took like all of the 5 county areas, and we had these performance metrics for them and made them look similar for every county. So then that elected official could take it and go, this is how many housing, jobs we have, and this is the need that we have, and whatever that specific thing was that the SEDS then required. But I was thinking in terms of something along this line, where
that'd be amazing.
then you've got a whole bunch of support appendices, and the old plan won't go away. It'll stay on our website. Somebody can reference it, but do we need 20 pages on the history of North Ogden in the general plan, or do we need like a 1-page summary of what the community was and how that relates to the ideals moving forward? And I think Fruitland is a great like a lightning rod type of project for the city, because if you drive it right now, there's a stretch of it next to the Ivory Homes development where we required Ivory to put a sidewalk in. So there's one little wide spot in the stream that's got a sidewalk. And what does the future of that road look like? Because from an engineering and public works standpoint, it looks like mostly every other road. It's going to be wider, it will have full shoulders, sidewalk, curb, gutter along the entire length. And that might take 50 years to get there. Or the city could say, this particular country road will be updated for life safety only. So like widen spots in
We tried that.
areas where we can go off.
City council shot us down.
Well, and that's a good question. And that might be a question for the public, because if that's one of those things that the public identifies with, is this identity of Fruitland as an old timey little old road, how do we use that information from the public against just the like slow marching of time of public works standards and our standards, which every subdivision is required to meet. And we don't really have an administrative out on that unless we designate this right away looks like X and it's going to look like X forever. And that would be an interesting one to have a conversation around, because from an active transportation standpoint for bike and ped, it's really unsafe, right? But from this gives me the feeling of old North Ogden that I've always had, because it hasn't changed in 40 years. That's its own community flavor that we need to have a
I
conversation.
know this is near relevant sidebar, but my friends from West Point and from Mountain Green, is that the one up there? And South Ogden, we meet up here on Saturdays because they like to run Fruitland Drive. Like and it's unsafe, but they like the character and the charm and stuff.
Well, and I think,
Sorry, that's really not part of the general.
You're one of the ones that got run over.
I'm very fast.
so Scott, your comments just barely about that road, like that's exactly like what I was trying to mean when I said, let's give the public something maybe specific like that to dig their teeth into and tell us what they think. Because I think that's a very, like you said, divisive issue, but I love that idea. And I just wanted to say really quick, when you show this, this is what I would love to see the general plan look like. I know everybody here at this, table has had a lot of experience with the current one, which is awesome. Coming in new though, it was quite an act of heroism and dedication to read your general plan that's 300 and something pages before applying to be a planning commissioner. So in all fairness, that was rough. So if there's a way we could make it so that, new citizens, people coming in or developers could grab it, flip through it, read it, that would be really great. I just want to put that out there.
That's why I suggest breaking it down into different sections.
Yes, right.
That way they can go right to what they want to see, is to have to dig through it.
Mhm.
If they want to read history North Ogden, they want to dig through 50, 60 pages to find it. They can say, here's the history. And it's real short and to the point.
Mhm.
What, Scott, what as far as the discussion, obviously, that we're having, did you have like objective to go through like, the
I don't-
text topics, or are you just kind of really
No,
looking,
I
how do you
don't-
want to go forward?
I
with-
don't want to go through it right now,
talking to-
especially we've got
yeah.
public in the room, and I don't want to give the feeling that we're already beginning the process
Yeah.
of making decisions.
What if,
So that's why I was just
What
gonna
if
say,
we cut-
probably now, let's open up to public comment on the process of proposing the general plan to the public and their involvement.
Yeah.
So is everybody okay with that?
I think that's exactly what I was going to suggest.
Okay,
How
so
would the
this,
public like us to talk to the public?
yeah, so this time we'll open back up for public comment. Kind of discuss how the public would like to see the general plan proposed and involve the update with the public themselves. So if you'd like to address us, please step up to the mic.
Hi, Terry Severing. I just like to, just listening to what you're talking about, with that, I think you're on the right track as far as narrowing that down. I think it's a good idea. It doesn't need to be a history book. It needs, that's other places it could be and would make it easier for a lot of that. So, yeah, I think you're on that. I think that's a good idea to set that up that way.
Sir, I know you don't live in North Ogden, right?
No,
But if your town was, sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
No.
I don't think we know each other well enough that I can do that from you coming in here. So in your town, how would you want your city to reach out to you? Would you engage better on it with a Facebook campaign? Would you attend something in an elementary school if we had a bunch of card tables?
Oh,
like that?
yeah,
And-
yeah, definitely get out there to where you can get I'm more interactive. That's why I didn't like the Zoom stuff back in the day, or back when
Tell me
COVID
about
hit.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm more on one-on-one. I'd rather get in front of you and talk to you and see, because I can see how your reaction, and I can get that a lot better than a text or over a Facebook, or, a lot of fights have broke out over that kind of crap. And so, yeah, to me, it would be, put out a notice, hey, here, we're gonna have an open discussion about this. Come, and those that want to be involved in it, they're gonna show up. Those that don't really care, they're not gonna show up. They'll show up later on and throw, like you said, throw their concerns and throw their complaints.
And how would you want to be notified that that event is taking place?
The social media is kind of not a good thing, because not that many people use Facebook. It's pretty about 50%.
Clearly, we don't even read the Facebook.
Yeah,
I don't even.
Exactly. Facebook is a hard one because,
Percent of the people of North Ogden by doing social media.
right.
That's not fair to them.
Right. That's a tough one because a lot of people don't read the stuff that comes in the mail either. But honestly, that's that, or, somehow get that out door to door to let people know where it's coming because of that. Because papers aren't 90% of the people, I wouldn't say 90, but large amount of people don't even read the paper anymore.
Here's why I asked that is, we went through an exercise recently where we rezoned public parks into their own zone. It's called a civic zone.
Mhm.
And legally, when we rezone something, we have to give notification to people in a certain parameter of that. So we notified these people with, I don't know, a note on the door or something like that. And immediately that turned to, oh my gosh, the city's getting rid of parks and they're gonna, and so people misunderstood the notification. Showed up here with, and we can take that, that's fine.
Sure.
But I don't want to misinform either, like, hey,
I
we're
got 'em here.
overhaul the city.
At least you got it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least you're not here. So I think that's still the best way to get it, is either through the mail or through, when you're doing just a general area, door on the door is good, but through the mail, they say, if they don't see the card, that's one thing, but, post it on your media, that's cheap, that's free. But get that out there in a mailing so that they can at least see that. For those that don't do social media, I think mailing's still the best alternative as far as I'm concerned. Make
A lot
it
of
a
people
color
read
card,
that
so kind of
magazine too, yeah, I think a lot of people read that Connection magazine.
the connection,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think if we do notify like that, they would say, why are we doing this? Every 5 years, we revisit this and, not a, hey, we're looking to overhaul the city and turn it into a dog food factory. That's,
I disagree. I think we should say apartments coming to your neighborhood. Just see what
Everybody
we get.
would show up.
Yeah, but we're all manufacturing.
amphitheaters are us, hosting an event in your neighborhood.
North Ogden City.
There'll be a gondola through your neighborhood coming soon.
We're obviously suspended some of our formalities.
Chris Paul, North Ogden. I guess to that, I thought the city council was gonna do some kind of polling with that group that had shown up one time. I don't know if that's the same type of thing that we could use for the general planning, because to me, the whole purpose is to ask certain questions, verify, because and that whole briefing, they were talking about how you have people that shout the loudest, not necessarily what the whole community as a whole wants. And so they had some kind of correlation thing that I thought was awesome.
What group were you talking about?
I don't remember. It was something at city council.
It's called Flash Vote.
Yeah.
It's just a survey software that gets public feedback and then posts the results on their webpage. And
But I think some of it's door to door as well, wasn't it? Like polling or something?
no, they actually said they don't do phone calls and door to door because it's not, people won't respond, but they basically design their surveys to be short and get a core group, and then people can opt into the group and the group gets bigger and bigger. But really for scientific purposes, they want to have 500 people respond to get a good balance. And the idea is the first couple are skewed surveys, because what happens is people jump on because they're excited about departments or about police but then they stay in the group. And so when the next survey comes out, they get a blip on their phone or their email that says, hey, another survey, jump in. And it might be something that they're not passionate about. And then we start getting better and better feedback.
That's
So-
brilliantly devious.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
really clever.
Anyways, I just thought that when he was talking too, but the one thing I wanted to, dive into a little bit was on the whole overall concept of, because the more I learn about how the city budget works, the more I get scared on some of the stuff, because there's some things that are direct pass through. Obviously, you can't plan for that, but some of the stuff is stuff you can plan for, and some of it has to come with tax bases, et cetera. With inflation's a double-edged sword. At the same time that, property goes up, the next year it goes down. And that's so, the things that you expect from property taxes fluctuate so much you can barely plan on them. But the thing that I always think about is, when you have half of the budget is mostly coming from sales tax and a ginormous chunk, if you say doubling, then that means that you're doubling your police force, which is a ginormous chunk of the expense of the city. So to me, I think, more developing retail push, as well as trying to figure out, the highest north park you have is, I think it's Mountain View Park on 3300, I think. Is there a plan for something else farther up as you go up the mountain, all these other little things, while keeping the idea of a small city. But if you have 40,000 people, it's not really small anymore. But to focus more on the downtown and Southtown, I think is something that, the general plan, I would hope, the newer one that kind of succinctly says stuff, because right now, I think someone said code enforcement. I can't think who was talking about that, but that's another thing. We don't have enough people to enforce the code. So how do you, so there's a lot of little things in there that we're not paying for as a city, but we should. It's a service organization, safety's first, all that stuff, but at the same time, we're not getting what we want sometimes. And I think that's the whole point, is to make sure that the general plan, as you escalate to full build out, has those things that pay for the things that you want. Anyway, that was it.
So, Mr. Fuller, I have a question for you. 'Cause I asked
Yeah.
Mr. Seven the same. So how would you prefer to be engaged? How would you prefer your city reach out to you, and what type of, so that's the question one.
Yeah.
And then what type of event would you like to see hosted? An online thing, a charrette kind of a thing at an elementary school, something here in this room?
To be perfectly honest, with some of just a lot of relatives in North Ogden that yell at me and tell me what are my taxes paying for, and I have to explain a little thing. So most of the general population has no idea they're getting raped in taxes, blah, blah, blah. So what is the city doing for me, type of thing, and they don't see it. And so, to answer the question about, they don't have time to go to some of these things. If someone said TikTok, if it's on TikTok or Instagram, guarantee they'll look at it.
Yeah.
I think the Facebook, yeah, agree. I look on it maybe once a year, but anyway, my birthday when people send me stuff, but I haven't posted anything on that. It's more, like you said, quick, devious things that come into
You know, and that's one thing that I had thought about, but haven't really coalesced is how do you publish the city on, you know, it's a double-edged sword there too, because if you do, then you get all the negative comments and all the people yelling. But at the same time, you know, the Facebook can be limited, and I think that's what they're doing, but maybe it's time for Instagram and, you know, not TikTok, because that's, you know, Chinese thing, but, you know, taking over the world.
We
But
have an Instagram.
do you? We'll be darned. See, there you go. You need my,
Do you
you know,
prefer to engage digitally as opposed to?
I think so, to be perfectly honest. People's schedules are so nuts. I watch some of these ladies that have 6, 7 kids. They're doing the land speed record every time they go by my house to drop some of your piano, the soccer, and blah, 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 blah. You know, and their husband works, you know, I don't know, 12 hours a day. And there's no time. And they're not gonna, they barely have time for church stuff or whatever. And then they want to add this to it. No one's gonna show up. I mean, you have the people that are retired or whatever that probably do vote the most, to be honest. So that voter base will be there, but the people that may or may not use most of the stuff in the entire rest of the city. Nope. That's my opinion, but.
Thank you.
Is the other thing, digital, yeah, I answered it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir.
If we go back to the Brent Dayton training, the what hat do you wear? This is, you know, rooted in the legislative decision making. It's a recommendation from planning commission to city council, but this is the one place where the public has like full open ability to recommend what they want. And then what Brandon tried to do, you take these recommendations in the general plan, you turn them into policy statements. For example, we have a statement that we've told to the council and has some traction of interest, which is doubling of density for 30% open space preservation. That's kind of a policy we could formally write into the conservation areas. Most of those conservation areas are RE20. We're not having developers beat down our door to create half-acre subdivisions. They want 10,000 square foot or 8,000 square foot lots. So we have this really good bargaining chip with developers to say, that's fine. Look, we're willing to give you this increase in density, which is what we probably would have accepted anyways. But get a park or get a betterment or something out of it. And cities have that legislative power. But it's hard to get somebody to engage at this point, at this 30,000 foot view general plan point, even though it's the most critical, because almost everything that happens after this point, once the property is rezoned, we have an administrative process, the ability of the staff or the ability of the citizens to come in once they actually see their turn is super limited, and or by state code, they can do nothing. And then they just feel like the city hasn't listened to them. So we've grappled with this, and you know, Kai and I have chatted about this, and we had chats when Brandon Bell was here too, just about how do you get people with limited time frame to engage at the time when it's really critical, but it's one of those very important but not urgent things to do. And it's not urgent because you don't have dirt turning in your neighborhood, but it's very important that we look at it as opposed to like on the same list of hierarchy. Email is urgent, but typically not important, but it just takes up so much of our time because it's always like texting is urgent, but sometimes not important. So trying to figure out that balance of how we get the public to actually engage at the time when they can see, all right, we're going to create a plan and then we're not going to talk about it again for 5 years. We're going to let it, you know, set it in motion and let our administrative processes take over. And then in 5 years, we get to come back and analyze how did we do kind of thing.
You know, just a specific thought. So say you created something like this, right? And say you put snippets out on Instagram. Yeah, you can do little surveys. So you highlight a section, someone reads it, click on this if you want to get the whole document, download the PDF into your phone, easy. You know, but then you can even ask them a question like a yes/no question via Instagram, like and then republish the data. Like 70% of the residents wanted this, 30% didn't, type thing. And it's a really good interactive way of getting feedback and then providing feedback. Instagram's a good tool when it comes to interacting with people, and they can do it in like 45 seconds.
Okay, I agree with that, but the problem is you're not going to get 70% of the people on Instagram.
No, it's true.
And
You,
North
I mean, you
Ogden.
have to have multi outreach. You gotta have the elementary school. You gotta have all.
Information
Yeah.
on just one
Well,
source.
yeah, what everyone in this room knows is that we need to reach out in multiple ways.
Right.
We had 50% of the comments so far say
Yeah. Yeah.
no digital and 50% say digital.
It just depends on
Well,
what generation you're from.
Yeah,
So
or
I
Or
think,
what
I,
your
I can't
level
remember
of
when we had,
interaction is.
when we did this in 2015. So then we updated in 19 and then the map in 22. So the 4 times I've been involved with this. In 15, we had the most public. And part of that was Village of Prominence Point was a topic and it brought people in.
and
But at the same time, I can't remember, John, do you remember, did we have the youth city council or anybody like, I want to say that we had something like out in front of Smith's or Lee's, like little survey questions or a little something to just,
great idea.
like 1 or 2 questions that
In
just,
my opinion, though, the biggest impact to that was Brent Taylor's Facebook page.
yes.
It was so engaged, the public was hyper engaged in, for better or for worse, because
So-
we about killed each other.
But like, for example, that is,
Yeah.
if we, I think going down the idea of the survey or quiz, 5 questions or less, just something quick, but maybe it's, you got a QR code and a little sign out in front, by the stump, you
Yeah.
know, or Lee's, and just, you know, a question that says, would you trade smaller lots in your neighborhood for more parks?
Oh, that's,
Mhm.
yeah.
And just
The
start
hook.
that question.
Yeah.
And then, okay, and then maybe 2 other questions,
Go to
and
the
you just
website.
get a couple. And then that's gonna give us, you know, cause some people, I mean, just that question alone lets us know. Yeah, I'd live on a smaller lot if we had more parks, or no, I want my big lot. Well, that
I love
that
this
starts
idea.
down that path, but just
So,
something, but it takes, doing that obviously takes time. Cause we need to have that outreach, and we gotta get it done in the next couple of months to be able to have that out there,
What about-
because before summer and people are just all over
what
it.
about this? A question like that, that's the hook, right? At the stump or at Smith's or something, it's branded and says North Ogden, so you're not thinking if you follow this link, you're gonna get sold a timeshare or something, right? And pest control or whatever, but so it's branded North Ogden City, and then a hook, I love that, like, would you do this? QR code, you scan the QR code, it takes you to the website and get full information. Please click here for,
But even that, when we get there, still keep it simple of just,
Right.
here's 3 more questions, maybe a couple pictures. And
Yeah.
start there, and then, you know, 2 months later, we got the same QR code up that says, you know, what did your neighbors say about trading their lot for parks? And find out your results, and then ask them a couple more questions, and pretty soon we get 10 survey questions through the process that we think we can kind of work off of. Because, you know, going back to, I don't know how many years, John, have I been pushing to just close Pleasant View Drive, like, I think since I've been in here, maybe, but
Well, and it's on the engineer's plan from 2015.
yeah, and it was like, well, we had the opportunity when we were redoing the road, and we kind of went halfway there, but that same thing, you ask all the North Ogden residents, and you'd probably have 90% or more that say, yes, let's make Bicentennial Park bigger and just close that road off and have it end at
except my sister.
300.
Yeah.
And then you have all the pushback we got when we started talking about it
From Pleasant View.
residents. And but
Well, if
the
you're,
same thing, it's like, what are you, but knowing people like, hey, should we shut down Pleasant View Drive? And people are like, yeah, that's a pain in the butt to turn on to Washington Boulevard. But if it's, would you like to see Bicentennial Park bigger in this area? And then all of a sudden, well, yeah, okay, well, we need to take this road. And that, those are the things that I think people see and say, yes, we want, but you got to get specific about it and say, well, yeah, we
the
want
answer to
more
that
parks,
question is
right?
gonna be, we need a right-hand turn lane.
But Derek, I think you made a good point.
Yeah,
When you do that, you make it quick and fast, not these surveys that come out to take you 5 minutes, a half hour later, you're still on it.
but you have that, yeah, you only have a
One
couple of
quick
questions,
Well,
but when we have that, you have all the people that can hit the QR code or whatever, but we engage the youth city council to say, you know, hey, on a busy time, whether it's a Saturday or something and say, well, you guys get them to stand in, you know, not the day they're raising money for Weber High, but
Right.
you know, in front of Lee's or whatever, just ask the questions for those people that won't scan and just, you know, they might ask one question.
Yeah, but let's say you get 5,000 responses to that question from hanging it from a nice effort that answers one or two questions, okay? You get 5,000 people will answer the first question, 4,500 people will answer the second and
Oh,
down,
you got
right?
high
You can ask
percentages.
n number of questions on there.
I mean,
right?
like, whatever the first one is, you're gonna get 10% response to the second.
Right, you're gonna get fallout.
But that's
Right,
why
what it's called.
Then, so when you hit the results
But
and let
then-
people, then those same 5,000 hit the results and maybe they answer one more question that's different.
Or
And-
there's an invitation at the end to attend a discussion like this or a workshop or something like that. And now you're talking, you maybe 25 people show up to that have been filtered.
Yeah, because if by the time we're down to, hey, we're gonna have a charrette and whatever, see what the public's results are, come and discuss at the senior center on this night or whatever, and something short but it's getting it, yeah. Come celebrate new custard in North Ogden.
Yeah.
Everybody who took this survey gets a free custard. Oh, you didn't? Sorry, it expired.
That'd be a bunch of
Survey
custard shops
closed
again.
last week, but if you'd like an opportunity again,
Five,
but
5,000. 20% of the city. I mean, that's a huge,
I
I'm
was
thinking.
throwing
he was
If I had
optimistic.
100 responded, I would be like, this is successful.
Yeah, they've told us that if you can get more than 250 respondents that are random, meaning, like I said, that first group that signs up, they're not gonna be random because they're issue specific. But if you can get 250 to 500, then you're scientifically significantly.
$50 on, we can get 1,000 people to answer one question online.
I would too, like, people want to answer those questions.
Write that down, Scott.
Yeah.
We're still in public comment, by the way.
Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt the discussion. I would add, I like the idea.
Please state your name and.
Mark Hollingshead, I'm from Marriott Slaterville. I use the Shoreline Trail a lot. Something I would add is before you set your poll is, you know, you've got some meme graphic kind of thing and do that a few times before you add the poll. Just to get people thinking in front and they've commented and now spring the poll on them. So that, and the repeat of that, you know, advertising, you got to repeat stuff. So
That's the hook I was talking about.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So I've been going to a lot of planning commissions around the county for the last month. And one of the things, and this is a mindset that I use myself for my own self improvement, figure out what does Mark think about the world and such. And I use this when I evaluate the news and laws that are proposed and stuff. And it might help if you're out there doing, you know, community meetups and stuff, is to have a framework in mind that you all kind of follow. Because one of the things is I set myself my morals, my beliefs and stuff, and what I've learned in life, I call principles. Then I have a platform, which is kind of where my principles, where do I think things should happen in the world, then policy, and then procedures. What do we actually do, right? So a lot of times what you were talking about earlier, a lot of platform ideas out of your previous public engagement. And then when it gets to the procedure, there's some hiccups and the policy may struggle because of that in the middle of that. But if you're meeting with people and they're engaging on the platform, say, okay, what does that look like? What's the procedure that happens on your street that makes that work? So that way, when you're all talking to them, you have some kind of framework like that where you get them to not just, oh, that's a wonderful utopia. All right.
That was the principle I was trying to make at the
Yeah.
outset, specifics, not general, general.
Yeah. So, but then just but by having a framework such as I'm talking about, policy, platform, procedure, or policy and procedure, something like that, then when they're talking and say, that's a great platform. What does that look like as a policy, or what does that look like as a procedure that we actually do something?
But before that, you even said principles.
Right, that's the
tells
learning
me-
that a person has gathered in their life.
Your general plan would have the history book.
Life experience and everything is the principle, yeah. So that's something if you all come up with some kind of talking method like that, where you can reframe everything people bring to you and say, that is a procedure and it's a good one. And then let's back up a little bit. What does the policy look like that gets us to that? And then what's the platform that fits in that we've already planned out, kind of thing. So you can move the conversation from one end to the other with maybe less hiccups going on in the middle.
I'm gonna ask you the same questions. What's your preferred outreach?
I mostly use Facebook. I hate Instagram. My kids only use Instagram.
Is that also your preferred engagement? Would you rather attend an in-person workshop or an online?
I'm here.
Duly noted.
Yeah, so, I'm the kind of person where, I'd rather go to the hardware store than try to call them. But that's me. My wife's, call them, so that's how, and video, making your, engagement be a video with words that come across. It doesn't have to be someone speaking or anything, just, 1 minute video and, and then even, someone speaking about a thing for a minute and then put a bunch of pictures over it. So it's just voiceover, that kind of stuff. That's what works for me anyways.
Thank you. He makes an excellent point that the 4 guys in this room are the people that are gonna show up, right? Because they're the type of people. They're engaged, they care enough to come to this meeting, let alone where they actually can give meaty input, It's the other 99 lost sheep that are hard to get, really.
And we probably ought to identify those groups, just so we're not missing anyone. I think the youth are important, like.
And that's the future of the
Yeah.
city we're trying to build, right?
Wait, do you have kids?
No, they can't.
You want their input?
Yeah, they'll never-
It's adults only.
Well,
Like-
but a decade goes by quickly, and that's what we're planning for here, and they're, we can filter the ideas a little
Well, I
bit.
know, I just don't want a
But
city full of skate parks.
No,
You know what I mean? Like,
No.
one or two is good.
but the 20-something-year-olds and as was brought up tonight, the moms that are running to and fro. How do we make sure that we're reaching the people that we need to reach? I mean, I think we should go to the senior centers and the assisted livings here and have some surveys given to those folks. I think there'll be wisdom that
Right.
comes from that.
I love the idea of going to Smith's, going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Going to Lee's and saying, hey, can we put up this thing in your entryway for a week or for 2 weeks or whatever it is? That has our QR code. I mean,
And even some little paper surveys, some people, would grab it and just put it in a ballot box. I think we'd be surprised at, if you had a QR code, but you also had some paper sitting there and you just have a little ballot box and they go check, and they put it in there and
when you're sitting at Great Clips waiting for your,
totally.
right, like and if we got something that they'd hang on their door for a couple weeks.
Totally.
Not every business is gonna participate.
A lot of them will though.
I think so, yeah. That's why I think we'd get 1,000 people. It depends on how long you have though.
Well, and
Right.
with this new software, the idea is that we can have a QR code that goes to the site that then has the latest survey.
Yeah.
So it might be the general plan, that might be our 3rd survey, and our 1st survey might be snowplows, because we'll get a lot of people to sign up for the snowplow survey
Mhm.
to give their feedback, and a lot of people on rain or things. And then you keep that QR code out there and give people the opportunity, and you might change the title of it saying, hey, the surveys on apartments in the city, or the surveys, use that hook to get them to scan it. But then what you get is the scientifically valid data if you because the other thing that the survey company does is they'll help us write the questions
Yeah.
so that they're not leading and they're not biased in a way that it makes the integrity of the data better.
Are we concerned about if we make the barrier of entry too easy to answer these questions? That we're gonna get bad responses? I mean, think about it, like. I'm 15, I come down to McDonald's with my friends and it says scan here and I scan and I enter like, are we gonna get like. Booger answered for every question that's open-ended and, do you know what I mean? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Well, and that's a valid
Hey,
question, like, can they?
Whatever it takes to get to 1,000, right?
Sure, I got 50 bucks on
Taking
this.
it over and over
So-
again, like oddly, like.
The way it's designed is the first time they take the survey, they basically input some information to. So that then they're included in the group, like email address and stuff. So technically, each email address gets one vote.
Okay.
But then that's how that we also are able to reach back out and say, hey, here's a new survey, here's a new survey.
What about like, I mean, in the past, have you guys, one of the things I would love to see is representation from the different neighborhoods or areas. Like, is that something you can collect from them to make sure we're getting all the areas?
So it's a anonymous third-party vendor, meaning the third-party vendor has that information, and they don't sell it, just, I mean, it's secure and whatever. But they'll get age, address, and then what'll happen is they'll give us a result that shows this is answers by neighborhood, this is answers by age, this is answers by gender. And so that you can start seeing how it builds. And as you get deeper and deeper into the surveys, I mean, we're thinking maybe 6 a year. So it's not like every week they're getting a new one, but you start getting people who signed up maybe for backyard chicken stuff. Who are now answering questions about parks when they might still have a passion for parks, but they don't have a bias coming into the survey, already having their mind made up.
Yeah, that's amazing. And those survey companies are typically pretty good at validating and sorting things out. I don't know.
And then we use Qualtrics. I bought some of their stock a few years ago. It's tanked.
So we looked at Qualtrics, it was more expensive and
Yeah, it should be.
and it was more complicated. And basically we were on our own. A good example is the biasing of the questions. We were kind of on our own, and this other group is gonna help us
Hone it. so
vet
it's-
those.
What is this group called? Sorry. what
Flash
is it?
vote,
Flash vote.
yeah. In fact, I bet I could pull up a survey result, because they do stuff all over the place. Let's try Texas. Georgetown, Texas. See if it'll show.
And while John's pulling that up, there's no time frame. There's no limiting time frame. We don't have a consultant on board. This is staff led. It's a good time right now because development is slow. So this is a good chance for us to make use of the planning commission's time in a really important way. I'd like to get it done in a handful of months and just get it done and wrapped up and not have it stretched like 18 months like the general plan map did, but just so you're aware, there's no specific time frame.
Probably I would ask Albert also, was there any other engagement from the public online? We're still in public.
Oh, that's true.
Sorry, I haven't, there's someone with the initial CP, but they haven't raised a hand or anything.
Okay.
Need anything else from us, Scott? I think that kind of gives us direction.
Lots of really good feedback
That-
from me.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. Did Cody
You gonna wow us or?
Well, it's like,
Cody left.
of course, when I look for it. I
He's
can't
taking
find
a
it.
survey, so.
Yeah.
Was our system helpful? Was this useful? All right, well, let's, I think that's good, a lot of good points and direction. I think obviously the key is public involvement, but I want to make sure, I guess, that we delineate that this is not a redo of the general plan or update, but simply we're modifying the text to match the map that we, because yeah, so it's not just a whole let's readdress and some of the public involvement we get, it may trigger a map amendment, that's not out of the question, but I guess I don't want to me personally don't want to feel like this is the daunting task of let's redo the
I
whole thing.
didn't
Yeah.
understand that. I thought it was the dumping task. Rewrite.
So we're trying to correct the text portion, so the whole thing to more match the map that we updated a year
Oh,
ago.
okay, I thought we were laying the
So
foundation.
it's kind of
for-
like we did that. We somewhat did it with the map. And so now we're kind of like, hey, we need to make sure all the writing kind of agrees with some of that update. So-
Public understand, here's what we've got, here's where it's going.
Because at the same time, you look and say, I mean, but we can do anything we need to. It's
Okay.
But that's
I thought this was
really
like
kind
ones
of the
that we
intent.
here.
It
Revisit.
is in some ways. I mean, there's a lot of goal statements in the general plan. If you read them right now, that probably are worth vetting and seeing if that's still a goal statement. that we-
Well, we probably take out the roundabout at Alberta. We don't need that.
Spend millions of dollars building that road, right?
Oh, man, those guys were so, I don't know what the right proper term is, but man, they wanted a roundabout
At Alberta.
in our city so
I
bad.
also wanted walkability to the ice cream shops.
Well, they-
Until we got it.
It's things we drive in 2100 north.
Yeah.
That would be a good leading question. Do we need more ice cream shops? That'd be fun.
What would you,
Stores.
do we need more, and two questions to vote, do we need more dentists or ice cream shops?
There we go.
Third auto parts store.
So this is Sandy City they're on their second survey. But you can see it's only 500 people have responded, although this is the first survey. The next one had more. But they just ask a question, get results, and then in the back side of it, the city would have the activists to start looking at age separation and things. But then all of their open-ended questions, they do these word, what'd you call it?
Word cloud.
Yeah, the word cloud, where the things that are the words used the most are the ones that pop up the most and show up bigger and brighter. But they just went through and saying, hey, talking about public safety, would you pay an extra 20 per year for better public safety? And 66.8 said yes.
You know, what's discouraging about that is nothing's 100%. Like everything's such a close vote, you're gonna be vilified no matter what you,
Mhm.
right? Like, you want 40% of people to hate you or 60% of people to hate you?
Yeah.
But at least
Well-
you're getting statistics
So were
that
they
are,
trying to, were
you
they
know,
trying?
statistically significant. I mean,
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah, and one of the features they do is the difference
Fact.
between the red and the blue. The red or the blue are the people who have signed up for other surveys that are now coming in, and the red are the people who signed up specifically for this one.
Yeah.
That then have the option to become panel members for the future.
So those are not the yes, no.
Yeah, that's not yet, so that's
Yeah.
going across this.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so
Show the trauma.
so the people who signed up just for this survey, 55.5% said yes. They want to spend more money.
Yeah.
And then the other reds, you can see, no, I would, I wouldn't pay. But the red, it'll be more skewed, but they start separating it but then it throws all the people into that panel for the next round. So they all become blue because now they're asking them about, I think the next one was like traffic in. Well, we could even see it.
What's a
Little
great.
Cottonwood
Yeah.
traffic. And the other nice thing this system does is it automatically publishes it. As soon as the survey closes, it just publishes, it goes on the website and residents can see the results instantly.
Incredible.
Does anyone believe that we can't get 1,000 people? Because
Oh, I
I
totally
found the
can.
question, do you want a gondola?
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah,
Yankee bundle.
that was great. Yeah, they're talking about taking a gondola up Little Cottonwood. So
Yeah.
anyways, it's a tool that we're hoping will make everybody's job a little easier.
That's incredible.
Well, thank you, John. Thanks, Scott, for your information. We'll close out of that item, move on to our public comments item. If there's something you'd like to address the planning commission, please do so at this time. Isn't he wincing like? All right. Planning commissioners, remarks, anything?
I have a question. I read about the passing of a developer in the county, and I was wondering if that's, and if we don't know, or what that does to North Cove. If we know, because wasn't he the one that was,
Yeah.
we were talking North Cove, is,
So the company is still functioning. They've had a few folks step up and step in who were friends of the family or friends of Randy's. To help keep things moving. I don't get the impression there'll be a dramatic change, meaning there won't be a fire sale of ground or anything like that. I think that it might delay that discussion a little bit, although it also might, with new folks involved, help them center and say, well, where's the biggest effort or the biggest things we can do? And they might focus back on the North Ogden Hillside again, so.
So it didn't really take North Cove off the table or anything like that, at least not yet, or,
Not that we've heard of, no.
okay.
Any other remarks?
I think that pamphlet or whatever you call it, the Wasatch Front Regional Council thing is amazing. I think that's a really neat thing to bring forward that could really help educate people, whether it's digital or hard copies or whatever. I think that's it's a really neat document. So just wanted to comment on that.
Thanks. Scott, is this like your new title?
That's my new title,
Okay,
more words.
a report from the CEDD,
Son, I am the.
Community and Economic Development Director.
Yep, so the city went through a process to hire an assistant city manager, and in doing that, I had thrown my hat in the ring for that, and a lot of really good employees stepped up as an internal opportunity, and the outcome of that is Dave Espinoza is identified as our assistant city manager. We're really happy to continue to work with him in that role, but for planning as well as building, there's just some changing. So some title changes, we're going to have some responsibility changes. I'll be doing a little bit more on the economic development side. John has asked me to take on some property management type of items with where public interfaces with, private land interfaces with public lands and what to do with those pieces of property. So in a reflection of that, the city has changed my title to Community and Economic Development Director. So looking forward to continuing to serve you that way. And I'm still the planning director is like a nested title in there for all the places in Title 11 that the planning director is the deciding administrator. That's still housed in my role unless we were to kind of like sub that down into another employee. So
High powered position now.
yeah, the title's this long. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, just briefly, we talked about in staff meeting this morning, is the city is experiencing some flooding right now. So it's feast or famine with water, it seems. We talked about that a little bit in the beginning, but North Ogden is strange for somebody who's grown up in this area. And I grew up in South Weaver City. I've lived in Layton and Kaysville, but North Ogden's weird that you can just like poke a hole in the mountain and water just comes out of it. And we
went like 1,100 feet for a well, just off Washington Boulevard.
This is true.
Remember that?
But we have springs popping up in places that we don't expect springs. We have water coming out of the alluvial fan on the hillside that just, be aware of that. Our reservoirs on the west side are full. And for the public as well as planning commission, there are sandbags available. You can get 20 sandbags per resident are available to self-fill over at the Public Works building right now. Sand and sandbags are available until they're gone. And if you need them, if your neighbors need them, just please go and utilize that resource. We won't try to until they're gone. We've given out over 1,000 sandbags at this point, but
When's it open?
it's open now. I'd go over and get them. They're open during business hours. It's down kind of like by the salt sheds, isn't it?
Yeah.
Further down the Public Works site.
Okay.
So go take a look at that and we'll deal with all of the water and hopefully we have a slow thaw and we just end up with reservoirs that are full and not overwhelming flooding. So,
We just keep dreaming.
yeah.
Probably a bit of both.
And a little bit of both. Yeah. One of those reservoirs has 16 or 18 feet of water in it. The one up in the middle of the hill that we've never really seen that much standing water in it too. So don't let people swim in it. Don't go active reservoirs. This is a kind of a dangerous time.
Water's cold.
Oh, are they gonna do the kayak at the Portage Park again? That was cool.
So-
That was way cool.
Any of the parks that aren't fenced, or any of the areas that aren't fenced are less than 3 feet of water, or 3 feet or less. But anything that is fenced is greater than that. A good example is like the dog park's locked, because it holds more than the 3 feet of water. But Orton Park is less than 3 feet and safety doesn't require us to, so if you want to take your kayak on it.
I just thought, I don't, but I thought it was cool for the kids.
Yeah.
Just remember not.
Is
to
it
bring
full?
things up
Is
at
that water?
the
Oh, it is?
Ooh.
My sister-in-law calls the pond at the dog park.
Food
Poop on.
We also had groups of third graders come through the city hall today, and that was really fun to talk to little kids coming through and interested in try to break down, what does the community and economic development director do in that elevator speech of what we do. And it's like, we help locate houses, we help locate businesses, we help locate parks, and thinking about it in those terms actually kind of breaks it down to the general plan and what we're actually doing here, as opposed to, regulations as they relate to building permits and other things that we deal with that are.
So are you saying you're smarter than a third grader? Or you're trying to?
If you can't, I think if you can't relate what you do at like a third grade level, then you might not understand it well enough to relate it to the public. That's one of those things, like how do you explain what you do at this very basic level? And especially it gives you that, like, you've got 10 seconds, 20 seconds to capture somebody's attention, and you need to be able to say it that simply. But it was really fun to have them come through, and they're excited about all the things the city does and wanted to talk to us about.
Just a comment. Yeah. A good teacher, a good person can inform people, can communicate at all levels. Regardless, they can either tone it down to the third grade or they can take it up to the 12th grade. They have that ability.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
thanks.
all I have. Yeah, thank you.
We might slow down, and then a week later they say get a zillion applications in the next couple of months or none. But we'll keep working on stuff as we have available, and this future planning stuff that Scott's taking on is going to be huge to help us get ready, and we can pause and slow it down as applications come in, or just keep chugging forward. So it's going to be exciting. I think one thing to keep on your radar is the summer barbecue that we do, that you're all invited to, is in June this year, at the pool with, barbecue fun, prizes and things. So we will
And a
get some more
survey.
information and a survey. Yes.
Are they going that course?
Your ticket is after question 5.
Yeah. Sorry.
The free swim passes again for employees again.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll be able to utilize the facility. If you go, you give them your name, and
With about 100 passes, something like that.
I think it's 50.
50, okay.
Yeah. So
Such a great thing for employees to be able to have.
It is.
I think, it really isn't an expense to the city to allow, I wish we had more, honestly, I wish we had more resources
Public comment.
to pay staff in the city more, and anything we can do like that to retain people and help them continue work for the city. I think we should support, because
yeah, no, we're really grateful.
yeah,
For
so
being
I
here.
think it's great to. We're so.
Yeah. We all do. I think Chris does as well. He wishes we had more money.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, John. Motion to adjourn.
This was a couple years ago. Move we adjourn.